So you're saying there's a chance? Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to do Packers time, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Playoffs? You talking playoffs? Yes, Grossi. And today, after many requests in the good old DMs, I figured it was around that time. As the Packers' playoff hopes, they're still there. They're creaking the door open, and with the San Francisco 49ers win over the Seahawks, it got open a little bit more. It was time to talk about the path to the playoffs for the Green Bay Packers. Now, I'm going to head into this video with one goal and one idea. The Packers win out, which by itself is going to be difficult. They play the Rams on Monday Night Football, which is a very winnable game, but then they are at Miami on Christmas Day, which while the Dolphins have struggled as of late, it's still going to be a tough game because they have Tyreek Hill, so that's going to hurt me. You got the Minnesota Vikings, which I think is a winnable game, and then you end at home against Detroit. So Detroit is going to be a tough game as well, as they've been playing really well, and they're also vying for a playoff spot. It does help that 3 of our next 4 games are at home, but it's going to be a challenge. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to assume that the Packers win out.
You make an ass of you and me.
So what teams do we need to fail? Well, looking ahead, we need the Commanders, the Giants, the Seahawks, and the Lions. Those are going to be the teams we're going to be paying attention to today. Taking a look at the current standings, number 1, you have the Eagles, who have clinched a playoff spot. Number 2, you have the Vikings at 10-3. Number 3, you have the 49ers, who clinched their division and a playoff spot last night. Number 4, you have the Buccaneers at 6-7. A reminder, it doesn't matter what their record is, somebody has to win the South, and that team will go to the playoffs. So it really doesn't matter if it's the Panthers, Falcons, Buccaneers. That's not going to have an impact on the Packers. Then number 5, at 10-3, you have the Cowboys, 6 the Commanders, and 7 the Giants. Ahead of the Packers right now, 8 is the Seahawks, and 9 are the Lions. So right now, the Packers are sitting at 5-8. So if they were to win out the rest of their games, they're going to finish with a record of 9-8. Now, unfortunately for the Packers, they have lost tiebreakers to both the Commanders and the Giants because they lost to them earlier this season. Now, in terms of the Lions, the Packers can just win out and they'll beat the Lions through tiebreakers. They'll win just based off of strength of victory. There's a bunch of different tiebreakers that they'd have to go through. But if the Lions were to win out and the Packers were to win out, the Packers would beat the Lions the very last week and they would hold the tiebreaker over them, meaning that they would make the playoffs and the Lions didn't, depending on what happens with the Commanders, Giants, and Seahawks. Now, those are a lot of teams that need to fail. However, like I said, we don't really have to worry about the Lions because as long as we win out, everything is fine. But let's talk about the Commanders, Giants, and Seahawks. The Seahawks only have 3 games remaining. Their current record is 7-7. They have not been playing well. The defense hasn't been looking good. The offense against the 49ers really didn't look good. But they have the Chiefs, the Jets, and the Rams. 2 out of those 3 games are going to be tough. 1 out of those 3 games are going to be very tough, that being against the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Seahawks only have to lose 1 more game because the Packers do have the tiebreaker over them if they both finish 9-8. But for right now, I'm not too concerned about the Seahawks. They're kind of a banged up football team. They're kind of on the decline right now, and considering they're going to be playing one of the top teams in the AFC and a very strong defense in the Jets, they're kind of not my concern. So instead, we're going to take a look at the Commanders and Giants. Now, the good news is these teams are playing each other on Sunday Night Football. The bad news is the last time that they played, they actually tied. And if they somehow miraculously tie again, that's actually very bad for the Packers because both these teams are sitting at 7-5-1. What does that mean? Well, if the Giants or Commanders win 2 more games, the Packers' chances of making the playoffs are pretty much done because that way the Commanders and Giants at worst would finish with a 9-7-1 record, which is better than 9-8 because they don't have 8 losses. So both of them would be ahead of the Packers in the standings. Now, like I said, the good news is the Commanders and Giants are playing each other. So it's likely that one of these teams are going to lose. Looking at the Commanders, besides the Giants, they have the 49ers next, then the Browns, and then the Cowboys. Now, that's not the easiest of schedules there. However, the Cowboys heading into the final week, they may already have the number 5 spot locked up, and so they might not have anything to play for. So that is a bit concerning, and the Commanders might have everything to play for. So that could wind up backfiring on the Packers. And then taking a look at the Giants, they have the Commanders, the Vikings, the Colts, and the Eagles. So those are a couple of tough games in there. They should be able to beat the Colts, but the Vikings will definitely put up a fight, and the Eagles, we'll see. The Eagles, if they haven't clinched the number 1 seed, they'll still have a lot to play for, so that actually would be very good for the Green Bay Packers. Of course, we just saw the Eagles beat the crap out of the Giants earlier this week, so that is helpful. The Eagles should be able to win. But basically what the Packers need is whoever loses the Sunday night game between the Commanders and the Giants, we need to root against that loser the rest of the way. Because it's likely that the Commanders or the Giants, one of these teams is going to make the playoffs. It'd be great if they both started tanking, and that would help the Packers and kind of just give us some insurance. But if the Commanders, for example, win on Sunday Night Football, we need the Giants to lose another 2 games. And that's very possible against the Vikings and against the Eagles. Because again, a 9-7-1 record is better than 9-8 that the Packers would have if they win out. So one of these teams, they need to tank, which looking at the Giants is very possible. They are a banged up football team right now. They got lots of practice squad guys out there. And again, their schedule is not the easiest. So I say the easiest path to the playoffs is if the Giants lose to the Commanders, the Vikings, and the Eagles. That would give the Packers a better record if the Packers win out and allow them to take their spot. Because again, then they would pass the Lions. The Seahawks, I think it's very possible that they lose 2 games, and that would give the Packers the 7 seed overall. Now, all this goes out the window if the Packers are going to drop 1 game. If they drop a game, let's just say against the Dolphins, because it would be really, really bad if they lost against the Rams, the Lions would just take their spot, and the Vikings, it's another conference and divisional thing which would hurt them against the Lions and also the Seahawks. So that being said, if they lose against the Miami Dolphins, is it possible to make the playoffs still? Yes, but then the Commanders and Giants need to lose more games, and it's just going to get more difficult. Same exact thing with the Seahawks, and it's going to be more difficult with the Lions. So in a perfect world, the Packers win out, the Commanders, Giants, Seahawks, and Lions all start failing, because then that would give the Packers some insurance in case they lose against a team like Miami. But the easiest path to the playoffs, to make this nice and simple, the loser of the Commanders, Giants, you are rooting against them to lose another couple of games. So they need to lose 3 total games for them to have a shot. That would give the Packers the edge and be able to get the 7 seed. We only need the Seahawks to lose 1 more game because the Packers have the tiebreaker over them based on conference record. The Seahawks currently have a 5-6 conference record, while the Packers have a 4-5 record. So if the Packers win out, they'll have the edge there. So in the best case scenario, the Commanders or Giants need to lose 3 out of their 4 next games. And of course, the Seahawks need to lose 1 more game. This is, of course, all depending on if the Packers win out or not. If the Packers do not win out, yeah, this gets a lot more complicated, and it is not a best case scenario. But for rooting purposes, you want all 4 teams to start losing, but the easiest path to the playoffs is having the Giants drop 3 more games and the Packers just somehow pulling it off. So yeah, it's not an easy road by any stretch, but still very, very possible. The Packers, maybe they're getting healthy at the right time. Romeo Doubs should be back, so we're going to kind of see how that offense looks with Doubs and Watson, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, and let's see if they can put something together. You never know. All they have to do is make the dance. It's going to be a challenge to get there, but hey, you never know. Before I get out of here, I want to do a big shout and thank you to some brand new patrons and YouTube members. First, on the Patreon side of things, we have Charles in Roseville, we have Niels DeBoer, we have James Pribel, and Griffin Hegwer. A big shout out and thank you to you all. And over on the YouTube side of things, joining the Grossi Posse Plus, we have John Ward, Andrew the Depressed Cowboy, Dr. Shane Tilton, Jonathan Valentina, and Isa Muruff. A big shout out and thank you to you all. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Do you think the Packers claim one of the 5 spots left in the NFC? Let me know. You guys find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media you see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.